Good evening, everybody. So glad you all could be here tonight. My name is Betty Sim Conroy. I'm president of the Key Biscayne Neighbors Association. Our board members sitting right up here, Josie Valdez Herdado. She's our vice president, and Servando Parapar, who's our treasurer. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have our state representative, Vicki Lopez, here with us. She will provide an update on the legislation dealing with Key Biscayne that was passed in Tallahassee. And from what I have heard from several sources, she has worked very hard on our Key Biscayne issues. Let's welcome Representative Lopez.
Good evening, everyone. So good to be back home. As you may have read, we had a very long session, 105 days when it's supposed to be 60. So it took us 45 additional days in which to finish the work, and the vast majority of that was the budget. You may not know, but the only constitutional requirement that I have and that the legislature has is to pass a balanced budget. All the rest of these good things that we do, which is bills that we pass, is I call icing on the cake. So, Betty, first of all, I wanted to thank the Key Biscayne Neighborhood Association. You've been really so much a part of the work that we have done here. And I mean that by telling you that so much of what I do is informed by you, right? When I hear what you have to say, and it's groups like this under the great leadership of this board that helps me understand what it is that is happening here on the ground, especially when I'm in Tallahassee. So I want to thank you, Betty, and the board for always being a good partner, because we can't do this without you. So as you know, probably the number one issue was the condo issue, right? I got reelected in November, and by December I was back in Tallahassee for 3 special sessions. And the governor had hoped that we would do a bill then, but I'm really grateful that we didn't, because you cannot do a bill that's 191 pages overnight. It requires work, it requires compromise, it requires negotiating. So I think that we settled in the final days of session. I negotiated with my Senate partner, Senator Jennifer Bradley, who's a great partner and has been carrying the ball from the very beginning. And I think we settled into something that is a good product. It's not perfect. And if you've read some of the articles around it, no doubt there'll be a Condo 5.0 to continue to bring clarity and more transparency to the process. But I wanted to go over some of the highlights, because obviously the reason that the governor wanted us to address this in special session back in December and January was because everyone was concerned, not just us here in South Florida or in Key Biscayne, but all across the state. We had lots of condo owners worried that they would not be able to stay in their units, and more so worried that they would be financially, distraught on the requirements. So that became the focus. How did we strike a balance between making sure that condos were safe and affordable, which isn't always easy? Because I like to say that condos are very affordable when they're first built. We all know that, right? Things new, there's nothing to do. And then around the 12th to the 17th year, things start to happen. You got a waterproof. Some have had to have what we call concrete restoration, because we are living on the coastline and saltwater intrusion is real. And I think what we discovered is everyone thought that condominium living was inexpensive, affordable for retirees and affordable for young families. But when you see the costs related to keeping a building structurally sound and then maintaining it for the other things that are not structural, it becomes somewhat expensive. And I think we'll learn much more when the Surfside report is out. But we already have an inclination from some of the preliminary findings that the building wasn't built correctly. And that is a real shame, because 98 people lost their lives one night on what I'm going to probably say was probably human error and maybe some corruption. But we don't know that yet. We're waiting to hear the final report before we can pass judgment. But we surely don't want that to happen anymore. And so some of the newer condominiums, as you know, are in fact built to Florida code. But many, 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 and we have the most in Miami-Dade County. So we have the most 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old buildings that were never built to code. So when you go to do a major repair, sometimes you're required to bring it up to code, which is even more expensive. So we were keeping all of that in mind, but I want to go over some of the more important parts of the 191 pages because we could not cover that here tonight. But if you're interested in getting a analysis of that bill, just so if you want to read it, I was talking to Charles, wherever he is. There, sorry, Charles. He's reading the bill. He is reading all 191 pages. But to make it easy on some people, we are happy to send you the bill, but we are also happy to send you what's known as a staff analysis, which is performed by committee staff before the bill is heard. So it gives people background on the bill. It tells you what the changes are. So if you want anything, let me introduce to you someone who doesn't need an introduction, but Alessandro Marcassani is my legislative aide. He is wonderful. Thank you for that, Betty. He is my right hand, and he knows this bill as well as I do because we both have studied it, worked on it together. So we will make sure before you leave that you can at least email us, and we'll make sure you get what you need of any of the bills that we're talking about tonight. So we'll jump into the condo bill and what's known as the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. We've done a lot of talking about that. So what does this particular bill do? It revises it to only include 3 habitable stories. Remember, the original bill was 3 stories. So we have a lot of condominiums in Florida, and in particular here, that have 2 stories and then a parking garage underneath, right? That makes it 3 stories. But there are only 2 habitable stories. So now you don't have to have a structural integrity reserve study done on a building that doesn't have 3 habitable stories. So that we exempted so many buildings because that's very common in the what we call the 2 and 3 story buildings. So many people weren't understanding, well, why do I have to do that if my parking lot underneath my habitable stories is just a parking garage? And we have some here in because I know I've knocked on the doors. They're 2 stories and then they have the garage underneath. And so anyway, they're now exempt. We are also saying that you have to differentiate between what's a mandatory reserve item and what is not. So that you know, I mean, I'm sure all of you probably have either know that your condominium concluded the SIRS study or you saw a copy of it. We want everyone to know that there are 8 structural components, right? The ones you cannot waive, the ones you must reserve for. And one of the changes was, you might have remembered that the last item of the 8 said that any item over $10,000 has to be reserved for, right? Well, now we changed that and increased the limit to $25,000, which gives a huge relief to those that were sitting here thinking, why do I have to reserve for something that's $10,000? We could just pay that out of reserves or do a special assessment. So that's one big change. And we also exempted what's called 4 family dwellings. We'd forgotten those. So we had exempted 2 and 3, 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings, and we forgot that sometimes we have 4 family dwellings. So that means that there's just 4 of them right there together, so you don't have to reserve for those. We also said that I can't tell you the number of different types of forms that I have seen, the SIRS, right? None of them look alike. Some of them don't, some of them look crazy. Some of them are telling you to reserve for things you don't have to reserve for. So this bill says that the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, which is known as DBPR, they're required to have one form done so that everybody's using the same form. Then we'll know that we're comparing apples with apples. Because what if your SIRS shows something different than her SIRS, and yet they don't even look alike? So how can I determine which one is right? Right? So there's going to be one form, one uniform form. In the milestone inspections, so remember that the law is that if you have a building that is 30 years, when it hits 30 years, it has to perform what's known as a milestone inspection. Now, that's done just like the SIRS, which is done every 10 years, so is not the milestone inspection. When you get to 30, you'll do the next one at 40 and 50 and so on. All right, so we're requiring a creation of a report. So nobody knows who's done it. Nobody. We don't have an inventory that tells us, okay, of all the condominiums in Florida, who's completed their milestone inspection and what did we find? Because some milestone inspections, remember there's two phases to them. One that is a visual, they look around and say, oh, this building's okay. Or they look around and say, ooh, there's some things that might need to look at more deeply. That's the phase 2 inspection. Usually those result in having to do more repairs to keep it structurally sound. Makes sense. That's why you're doing a milestone inspection. So those, as you know, are known as special assessments because you couldn't have reserved for them. You couldn't even budget for it because you didn't know. You don't know what's wrong with the building that has to be improved or repaired. So we're finally going to get a report about every condo in Florida, which is going to help inform policy. Let's find out how many. Look, it's not a problem here in Miami-Dade or Broward because we've been recertifying buildings since 1997. So, but there are 65 other counties that have never recertified a building. So imagine a building that was built in the 70s. No one's ever looked at it. Never. So the problem there is that we have discovered that people have had to move out within 24 hours because the buildings were not structurally sound. So that's the good part of the law. Here it doesn't really impact us because we've been doing it already. What does impact you is the amount of repairs you have to do if you haven't been maintaining your building. So naturally, if you didn't maintain it over those first 30 years or you didn't do it properly, you're probably going to have a lot of repairs that need to be made, which means that you're going to be hit with a special assessment. So those are the two things, and that the milestone inspection is only required now for buildings that have 3 habitable stories, again, to make sure that the SIRS and the milestone are being done the same, okay? So then we've also learned, we had a lot of people with a lot of conflicts of interest. So we had people doing the SIRS, and then they were applying for the milestone inspection. And then the people that were doing the milestone inspections then started, another company with another friend, and then they bid for the job. But they're the ones who they have the inside information. They know what's wrong. So we've said no more conflicts of interest. What we did was we prohibited a person who conducts the SIRS from being able, or the milestone inspection, so either one, they're required to tell the board either they have a direct or indirect interest in a company that might come and want to do the business. And if they don't, and they have to say whether they're related to somebody, like a fourth cousin, or my best friend, or my neighbor who I've cut a deal with, right? I mean, this is going on all the time. And you may not be experiencing it in your building, but we're experiencing it across the state. We're also requiring the architects and engineers and any professionals that are conducting the milestone inspections to disclose in writing that they intend to bid for the work. So you can decide. And then if they don't tell you and you find out, the contract is voidable. So you're no longer bound by that contract if they lie to you or if they don't disclose what they know they have to by law. And then we started looking at, this was a big deal. Now, this is a big deal for the governor, and we're all going to say it's a big deal for all of us. So many of you have property managers who are known as community association managers, or CAMs. That's how we refer to them in the law, right? We made a couple of tweaks to them because we know that we have some bad actors, and you probably know some of them yourself. So we prohibit any CAM whose license has ever been revoked from having an indirect or direct ownership interest in any CAM firm or being an employee, partner, officer, director, or trustee of a CAM firm. So now they can't get away with having had their license revoked and then jumping to another firm or jumping to another property, because some of them, remember, are sole CAMs, right? They're just licensed to do it. And I know that I have some here that could use a little bit reminding of this new law. And if you don't, then you need to remind them that this is what the new law does. It also requires CAMs to maintain and update an online account with DBPR that tells everybody what condominium you're the property manager at, so we can find out where you are. Right. Then we also said that they must comply. We have had CAMs where the board has said we have to do the milestone inspection, and the CAM says, no, don't do it. You don't have to do it. Well, they're going to have to do it. If not, their licenses will be revoked. We also are saying that they have to include a statement in the contract. So boards now have to include a statement in the contract with the CAMs that says that these CAMs will abide by professional standards. So you're putting them on notice right when you sign the contract that you have professional standards you're required to, comply with as a licensed CAM. So that way, when you go to have to sue them, you can say right here, you said you would, and you didn't. And then lastly, DBPR is required to give notice to the condo association where they work, because now we know where they are, right? They're required to tell us where they are. If they do any disciplinary action or they revoke their license, DBPR is now required to let the board know, because how else would we know, right? They're not going to tell you. So there were some real good tweaks to community association managers. There's also, I think, good tweaks on the condo association meetings. So, meetings and elections are something that everyone talks about with me. So let's talk about the meetings. So now they're going to allow condominium associations to conduct their meetings using video conferencing, including any board meetings, unit member meetings, budget meetings. They can all be done video, but you have to, in order to participate, you have to record those and you have to make them part of the records. You have to put them on the website. So let's assume you missed a meeting and you couldn't go video conference. Now you'll be able to watch the video, because a lot of boards said no, we didn't keep the video, or we didn't record it. So now they're required to record it. They're required to be kept as official records, and they're required to be put on online. And they're also required board members who don't show up for meetings. I don't know about you, but we say if you've got a fiduciary responsibility, you have to do the job. And so they can now participate via video conference, but they can't vote. Their vote doesn't count. Just so that you know. Yeah. Yep. Their presence doesn't, they have to be present. Exactly. Present. Yes.
Because in my board, 4 of my 5 board members don't live on property.
I'm aware of that. This has been a big problem. So we have boards that own property but don't live there. Could live in another country. And so the problem has been that condominiums are corporations, right? And anyone who has a vested interest in a corporation can serve on a board, as you know, if you know anything about corporations. So we can't interfere in that kind of situation because they have a vested interest. They're an owner of one of the units. So again, I always say, don't elect them. If they don't live there, they don't have an interest in serving you, they don't know what's going on the property, elect board members that care. Recruit board members that are living in your properties and they want to be a part of the solutions. Because you're right. I mean, these are situations where they're not there. And if you are a board member and you join video conferencing, you don't count as a quorum either. So you may never reach a quorum. In your case, if they're all 4 of the 5 are on, you don't have a quorum. So you can't meet.
They can't do
Correct. They cannot. They cannot. And yeah, the DBPR is required to adopt rules on how to conduct these meetings using video conference. So you're going to be getting some guidance from the department that is going to kind of walk through what are the rules for these video conferences, because that's how they've been getting away with things. They don't show up and they feel like, they don't have to. Well, now they're going to have to if it counts, right? Electronic voting. So, this is Miami, and many unit owners do not live in their unit, don't live in Miami, don't live in Florida, and don't live in the United States. That's what I have found. It's predominant here in South Florida, right? So So many unit owners have been disenfranchised by not being able to participate in elections. Because if I send your paper ballot to Germany, chances are you're not going to get that paper ballot, certainly not in time to participate. So we have had some very big problems on Brickell. I don't know if I don't believe that I've heard of big ones on the Key. And remember, I have 62 condo associations on Key Biscayne of the 667 that I have in my district. So I don't think it's been that big of a problem, but it's been a huge problem in Brickell. And so now, if 25% of the owners ask for electronic voting, they must do it. They must. So no longer can they say, no, we can't, we don't know how. No, if 25% of you all get together, which in some cases, in some buildings on Brickell, only 25% live in the unit. So there will be more incentive for people to request an electronic ballot. So that's a big change that I think is going to be really important. And we're also revising the pre-sale. So before someone buys, a prospective buyer, they are entitled to the most recent year-end financial statements and the annual budget. And this came to us from the realtors who said, listen, we're selling a unit. These people have no idea what they're getting themselves into. And then they call us and ask why we didn't tell them. Well, we didn't know. So now that has to be disclosed in a real estate transaction. So a prospective buyer can make a decision. Do I agree with how they're spending their money? One, do I agree that all that money that they're spending then requires me to pay this much per month? And then already they need to get the structural integrity reserve study and the milestone inspection. When they get those two documents, they have 15 days to review them, and they can get out of a contract if they don't like what they see. Because in many cases, banks aren't even willing to give a mortgage to someone who's walking into a building that is in bad shape and doesn't have reserves and hasn't done their milestone inspection. So those are things that are important, I believe, for prospective buyers. Because again, we believe in more transparency, especially in real estate transactions. And lastly, we have absolutely no idea what the accurate count is of all the condominiums in Florida. Yes, well, because DBPR, who's supposed to have an inventory, waits for you to tell them. Well, what if I don't tell them? How do they know, right? So they can't tell me how many milestone inspections were done because they're not the county officials. So the new law is the local official that is in charge of ensuring that the milestone inspections are done now must send that information to DBPR. So that puts the onus, because you know how, if you haven't been through a milestone inspection, it's your local building department. So here on the Key, it would be City Hall who ensures that your milestone inspection is done. They will be required to send information of every milestone inspection that is conducted here. And if there were any permits issued, how much money did they need to spend? What were the repairs? Because we've been dying for a database. So now we're going to finally get the number of units in an association. We don't even know that. We don't know it by accuracy, right? The number of buildings that are 3 or more stories. I don't know that either. So how many are 3 habitable stories? How many are 3 stories? And how many are just less than 3 stories? We don't know contact information for all the associations. If you don't update it, you have elections every year. Guess what? They have no idea who the new officers are and how to contact them. And yet they're in charge of regulating. So they're going to have to get that information. They need the age of the buildings. When they were constructed, how old are they? And lastly, any assessments, including the use of those assessments, right? Because we don't know. We hear a lot of things, but until I can prove it, I can't do anything to help. So this is a way of trying to help. And then there are other things that we touched upon, some annual financial statement information, official records. We have a kind of a new condominium format is the hotel condos, which I'm sure you've heard of. They're becoming more and more popular. We need to fix a lot that goes on there, because if you live in a hotel condo, you know that you're not in charge, the hotel is. And I have bigger problems than you can imagine at the Epic in Brickell. And I tell you this because you're probably not going to see bigger problems by what I call the flagship hotels, the Marriott, the Four Seasons. They take care of their property, because they have to. But take a look at what happened with the Epic and the St. Regis in Bal Harbour. The Bal Harbour condo is owned by a person from Qatar. He's never here. He doesn't care what happens to that property. He's entered into a contract with a hotel chain, which is not one of those flagships, and quite frankly, they are experiencing huge problems as a result. The Epic is the same situation. That building is owned by a Spaniard who isn't here, who doesn't care. This is just an investment for him. So it has created real problems that I have to sort of look at for Condo 5.0. We've already started working on some of this stuff, but I think we're going to require a little more work on making sure that condo owners in those types of settings have the transparency, because remember, they're being charged for things and they don't know what they're being charged for. So that's even more dangerous when you don't have control of the association itself. And lastly, we've given DVPR lots more jurisdiction. I've given them more money this year to hire 10 more people to handle all the complaints. Because I'm telling you, I don't know. Remember that I gave them approximately 7 million the year before. Now I've given them another chunk of change, as I call it, to hire 10 more people. But with that came a caveat, because I'm not, if you know me, you know I'm a fiscal conservative, and you know that I'm worried about your money. So I've said, I'm going to give you these 10 people, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to tell me how many complaints you had before July 1st. And then you're going to tell me, because they tell me that as a result of these 191 pages, there's going to be so many more complaints. And I said, okay, then here, I'll give you the 10 people, but here's what you're going to tell me at the end of the year. And you're not going to tell me at the end, you're going to tell me on a quarterly basis. How many complaints did you have this quarter versus last year? Because they may just be looking for more people, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in, if you have complaints, are you actually addressing and resolving them? Because that's what my people want. I don't care about anything else. So we shall see. But I gave them money with a caveat so that it wasn't just free money. So that is the condo bill. And then I want to talk to you about 3 quick other bills. But yes, yes, of course.
About the reporting of the DBPR.
Yes.
In addition to the reporting on how many complaints they receive, I think it's important that they report on how many are valid, because there are chronic complainers who are always complaining to DBPR and other organizations. And I think that needs to be noted.
So part of the caveat was that you had to tell me how you addressed it. So we'll know whether there was no valid complaint. So I will make sure to share that with DBPR as part of when they are going to be making a rulemaking for all of this. Let's make sure that they tell us how many they dismissed because they were invalid. Because that's what will happen to it. If they don't think that there's a valid complaint, they'll just dismiss it. But we need to know that. So it's a good point.
Is there another way of determining if there is someone who is a chronic complainer, if they can at some point no longer pay attention?
That's a lot harder. I do understand the point, because so many of my good board members are consistently fighting with 1 or 2 people in the building that are chronic complainers. I hear that. Let me talk to DBPR about, like, what do we do with this when they finally realize that we've got a bad actor who keeps complaining needlessly, right? Because they're using resources. They're using DBPR, which I need them to be spending time on those that are valid. So we will look into that. Ellen and I will start having conversations with DBPR about that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm on a condo board, so this is interesting to me. I'm always at the meetings, but you said that at the condo meeting, if a board member is not present, they can't vote?
I believe
And if not present, it isn't a quorum,
there is no quorum, correct. So thank you, Charles.
even if they're online?
So if they're online, they don't count as a quorum. So we'll take Diana's example. She has 5 board members, of which 4 don't live here, so they're always online. They will never have a quorum. They have been having a quorum because they've counted themselves as unpresent. They're not present. Therefore, you can't vote. See? if you're not part of the quorum, how can you vote? You don't have a quorum. So no vote can be taken. In your case, no, yes. Oh, well, we're well into it.
I know.
Today is July 8th. We're 1 week into it. So you see, if you don't reach a quorum, then you cannot conduct official business. But they've been doing this where they are somewhere else and they're conducting business. Yeah.
So, let me
the
go.
microphone.
You have it on?
Yeah.
All right, if they're not there,
Because we're
then if they're
recording
not
this.
there, they can't vote. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, do these laws apply also to homeowners association or only
No.
condominiums?
So that is a good question. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. So condominiums and cooperatives are regulated under Florida Statute Section 718. Homeowners are regulated under 720. They do not have the same laws nor the same protections, just so that you know. It's interesting. And every time they try to do a bill that mirrors 720 to 718, because Miami Representative Juan Carlos Porras is the one who does all the HOA bills, because he had the issue with the hammocks, the big criminal, that's in his district. So when he got elected 3 years ago, he started running HOA bills. But he would like HOA bills to look like the condo bills. But for some reason, there's always been a little bit of pushback. I was just with him a couple of nights ago and I asked him, what are you doing this session? Are you going to do an HOA bill? Why can't we mirror them so that everyone has the same protection? Because I will tell you that some condos are actually HOAs, which I did not know that, by the way, until last year. So I have, for instance, on Brickell Key, I have 13 condos, but some of those also have HOAs, which is crazy, right? 2 buildings, the middle part, which is all the common elements, is an HOA. So it's not governed under this, which I think is somewhat schizophrenic in my opinion, because how do you manage that, right? So that, yeah, no, this is not HOAs.
We have, go ahead, no.
No, go ahead.
So we have 4 buildings in our condo, and there is a central homeowners association, but each building has a board of director.
Right.
So the homeowners association, if one thing, it cannot use that issue, and the board of director in each building can.
Correct. The condo association is governed under this law, and the HOA is not. Okay? So you heard his question. He's got 4 buildings. Each one of them has a condo association. Then there is a what I call an umbrella HOA. The individual condos are governed under Section 718.
Okay, so I have a question for you now. The DBPR. Since we have so many condos in the state of Florida, I found in my 7 years at Key Colony sitting on these boards and having to deal with the DBPR on some issues, I feel like they're just overwhelmed and they really can't follow up on a lot of the issues that affect multiple condominiums across the state, especially here. Have you guys even thought about maybe just creating an agency that only deals with all these? I mean, look, all the stuff you just discussed, it's huge, it's broad. I mean, it really is. It takes a lot of time. 10 people? I mean, Key Colony kept the former DBPR ombudsman quite busy.
I'm sure.
And I'm sure. And
Yeah.
my thing is to that is maybe the state should start really thinking, we have so many people moving down here. We have all these luxury condos going up. That's where people are living. And so maybe we as the state should maybe think about taking this out of the hands of the DBPR. Like, they can still license the cans. But I think a lot of these enforcement things, I mean, we can send it to them. You can put in this legislation. They're just overwhelmed. They don't, I mean, I think a few of us in this room can talk about going to them, filing complaints with them, and they're just overwhelmed. So I'm thinking that maybe for your 5.0 condo is maybe start thinking about, if we really want to be effective and do all the things that you want to do, which sound great, is to maybe just have an agency given the unique aspects of Florida and condo living?
So I'm glad you asked that question because that's been bantered around for the last 2 years, right? We never come to any consensus, never, because there's a school of thought that there's much more than just 10 people. These are 10 additional people to the 64 that we gave them last year, to the already how many they have working for them, right? There's a school of thought that why should we build another bureaucracy, right? There's that, and how much will that cost us? There's the school of thought that maybe we should get rid of the people that aren't doing their job and get people that will do the job. I gave them $500,000 this year, in this fiscal year now, to build a database just for complaints. And here was my complaint. If I make a complaint to DBPR, I have no idea what happened to it, right?
Never hear back.
I don't even know where it is. I don't know if they got it. So this 500,000 they have to do now, like, in the court system, we follow cases. We know where they went. We know what the disposition was. They got to do the same with every single complaint. They got to build a database now that says, Luisa filed a complaint on Monday the 17th. She's going to watch it having been received. She's going to go to the website and go, oh, it was received. Then she's going to know whether it's been reviewed. Then she's going to know, what have they done with it? Did they refer it to lawyers? Did they refer it to law enforcement? What happened to that? And then you're going to be able to follow it, because that's my biggest complaint. It goes into a dark hole and then it never comes out. And what comes out is a letter that says no complaint. Can't resolve it because no jurisdiction, or can't resolve it because you don't have a valid complaint. But we don't know what happened in between. So instead of you having to call me, so I have to try to find it, we now are going to make sure everyone can see it. So between the 10 people that I've given them, plus the 500,000 that I've given them to build this database so that we all know where our complaints are, maybe then, at some juncture, we may have to say, we got to fire everybody. And that's coming anyway, because remember, the governor's out in 2026, a new governor's coming, we're going to have a new secretary, God knows what's coming. We don't know, but we know that these people that are there now are not going to be there after 2026. The secretary, or the what I call leadership team, goes, and a new group comes in. So everybody goes. Pretty much everybody goes, just because, if you're a new secretary, you're building your own team. Here's an answer to your question. We have to give them this year to tell me, so I can see where they have failed you, right? Because I've given them all the resources now. So they're going to tell me if complaints increase. They're going to tell me where the complaint went. We're going to follow it online. Then the question is, maybe we got to get rid of people that don't want to do their job right. Because what we're doing is putting a Band-Aid by starting another agency. Well, what if they don't do their job? That's the problem. We need people who will follow the law and do for the condo owner. So give us a year and let's see what happens this year now that we've done some new things. Because listen, they're either gonna show up or they're gonna go out.
The problem is in the name.
The name is the department.
We're
Yes.
doing this video.
Okay, now Luisa's question was, the problem is in the name. The name of the agency is the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. There's a division, however, that is known as the Condominiums and Cooperative Timeshares, right? That's the division. It's a separate division from the big DBPR. So I only care about that one, and I care about how they license CAMs, which is a different department altogether, right? It's big. I agree with you. It's big. But give us some time to see whether this that we've now put into place helps. Because if they can't do it after all of this, then I don't know what the answer is, right? Because it's the people. It's either the people that are leading the charge, and they know they're under fire. You may not know this, but I'm a budget chairman of a budget subcommittee. And I have 12 agencies under my jurisdiction. And one of them is DBPR, which is why I'm watching them like a hawk, which is why I call these secretaries up and question them. They don't like it, but I'm here to find the truth. So let's find out, when I haul her back in, where are you? Where are you with building the thing? Where are you with the 10 people you were supposed to hire? I can do that every day. And she may not like it. The governor may not like it, but guess what? Our job is to ensure that they do their job. So let's give it some time.
More monuments, and we're trying to save money these days. But I would be the first to propose a monument to you for what you have done for the condominiums of this.
That is very kind, but it's my job. Thank you so much for that high compliment.
I don't say that lightly. My experience with the condos has been largely affected by the action of the CAMs. I think if you begin to control the CAMs, who have a vested interest, these people are making some decent salaries. Besides that, they are theoretically licensed, which means the state has a leverage over them. We know of a case where, for X reason, the CAM was actually thrown off Key Biscayne, left town, continued to work, and as we looked into things, his license, something happened to it. In any event, it's registered in the DBPR website. He was not, his license had expired, and yet he continued to do whatever he was doing or not doing. So I'd like you to, one more time, go over that
Yes,
prohibition and that
yes,
the license revoked.
yes. Be happy to, because I agree with you. But first of all, thank you for the high compliment. But remember, I am grateful and honored to serve you. That's my job, right? You don't get special favors for doing a job that you signed up for and that you have graciously given me. So I take this very seriously, but I'm very grateful for your gratitude.
You're a rarity.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But it is a privilege to serve you and to represent you. And we'll make sure you get this. Any person who's had their CAM license revoked from having a indirect or direct ownership interest in a CAM firm or being an employee, a partner, an officer, a director, or a trustee of any firm, they can never do that again if their license has been revoked. They also have to maintain an online account with DBPR so that DBPR knows you're a licensed CAM, and it has to indicate where they are providing services for either a condominium, a cooperative, or a homeowner. So they will have a website that says, Mr. X is the CAM, and he happens to be, let's say in my condo at Skyline. He's providing CAM services at Skyline, and then the address of my CAM. So now we know where he is, right? They're required to their contract. So this is important to boards. Boards must include a statement in their contract that says they will abide by professional standards and the applicable community association record keeping requirements, because many of these are not keeping records. So when you ask for them, we don't know where they are. That's all part of their job. And then lastly, DBPR has to give you written notice when a CAM firm or a community association manager performs a community management services when a CAM's license has been suspended or revoked. So this person that you talked about that was run off of Key Biscayne and went to work somewhere else, that'll never happen again. It'll never happen again. Because everyone will know he has his license revoked. So I hear you. I'm sorry that you've had to go through so much pain. Wait a minute, Charles is behind you. Microphone.
Just to follow up on Louisa's comment.
Yes.
I'm with other boards, other DBPRs, and the same thing pretty much happens. When you send them a letter, an email, it's lost forever in cyberspace. So I was wondering if instead of making this particular agency a statewide agency, not make it a little bit less, a little bit more localized, because I think that South Florida is so different from any other area, so unique to this particular clientele or, home ownership, that maybe the state up north is so different, that
is very
they
different.
get so many complaints from South Florida. They
Do.
probably say, "Oh, these South Floridians are just a pain in the neck." And basically, I think it should be a little bit more, or a little bit less wide, and a little bit more localized. Maybe by county, by district, by.
Because this was part of our discussions a couple of years ago. They had to put an office in South Florida because there were so many complaints here. So that office is supposed to be serving us in South Florida, right? The question I always have, and we ponder this in my office, is what is keeping them from doing the job? And we'll know how many complaints. Like right now, you know what? Everyone here could tell me I have filed a complaint, right? Or two, or five, right? I have to know exactly how many complaints have come and where are they coming from? Are they all coming from Miami? Forget about South Florida. Are they all coming from here? And then within Miami, are they all coming from Brickell? Because I'm afraid that that's high density for complaints, right? We got a lot of problems on Brickell. But once I get that information, I can do, I'm a believer that information helps to inform change. And until I know that, we're all walking around, just kind of saying things that we think is true, but we can't prove it. And, in the legislature, you have to be able to have evidence. So hopefully this year, when we get all of this data that we've asked for, God knows who's going to cull through that. It'll be Alessandro and me, working late nights, going through these reports and saying, because I like to drill down. Where is it? Where are the complaints? We'd be probably surprised. I'm going to take a guess that Key Biscayne's not a big complaint generator. Now, you think you are because here each one of you have filed a complaint. But let's take a look at it, because I'll be back with the first quarter report. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to know, right? Because maybe we'll all be surprised and you are big generators, right? So then that means something's happening here. Then that's when we have to invite the secretary down here, right? You got to remember, I've got ways to address these things, but I got to have facts.